Alright, so we're going to be making a trapezoid window to begin with, and so I've got the file set up. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is go to New, Family, and remember we have all of these different family templates to choose from. Well, since this is a window, let's take a look at what we have for window options. You have window for a curtain wall, window with trim, and just window. The window with trim and window, the only difference between them is the window is going to just have an opening in a wall and that's it. And then the window with trim will already have a profile in there for you that you, or I don't know if it has a profile, but will have some trim already extruded around the opening. So I'm going to pick that window with trim to see what's already in there for me that I don't have to edit myself. Okay, and what I've done for you on this piece of paper here is to show you what we probably want to have for parameters. So our parameters for a trapezoidal type of window would be the two different heights parameters to control the height on one side and the height on the other, and then a width parameter. And then the other annotation that I added here is as materials that we could add as instance parameters. Okay, and if you think of anything else, or you think that there should be more, or you have more ideas for this, then that's great. But I'm approaching it from a very simple aspect. So I'm going to take a look at what we have in here already for information, and it looks like we have the wall opening already in there. We have the wall being represented here, and then that's the trim on the outside, the exterior side of the window. So there's no trim on the interior side of the window. I'm going to go to the exterior side to take a look at it from the outside, and this is just a simple rectangular window. I'm going to get rid of the trim. I don't really want it, and I think the other reason I don't want it is it's just a simple extrusion, and I want to make a more substantial trim profile for this, so I'm going to end up making a sweep, and I'm going to have to make a sweep most likely because of the window size. I want to get this to the trim to match whatever window size that I set here. So I'm going to delete that, and then I have to adjust the opening. So right now the opening is being controlled by two parameters that are already been set for us. So if we look at what we have parameters here, we have a height parameter, we have a width parameter, and then we have a rough height and rough width parameter. If we want to see what are the controls for that, let's take a look at what we have already in the window for set parameters. So we do have height here is at 4 right now, width is at 3, rough width and rough height are blank. But what we would be capable of doing here is we could indicate what we want the rough width and rough height to be based on the window unit. We could say, you know, make it width plus 1 or height plus 1, something like that gives us our rough width and height. I'm not going to mess with it in this case because a trapezoid window is most likely a custom designed window, so I really just want this to be able to use it in the model and set it to the custom sizes that I want. If this was going to be from a catalog, then you'd want to take the time to set all the stuff up and make sure that you had those equations in there. So I'm not really going to deal with rough width and rough height in this. We have trim projection is set to 1 inch, trim width is 3. These are all type parameters because notice they don't have default next to them. Default, when you see default in parentheses, that means it's an instance parameter. It's something that we can change without having to edit the type. Again, I'm not sure if we're going to need the trim projection and width in this scenario, so we'll see what happens. And I can delete, I think I might be able to delete parameters if I'm not using them. We'll look into that, okay? Alright, so now that I know what's here, I'm going to add a new parameter, so a new reference plane first. So I'm going to pick reference plane here, and I'm going to set it to about here for now, and I'm going to rename that second reference plane for height. I'm going to rename that height 2, okay, or height, yeah, just height space 2 because we can put spaces here. So the height that we already have as a parameter here, I'm going to leave as our height 1. I'm not going to rename it because I don't want to mess up anything else that's already been set up. And then our second reference plane is going to be our height 2 that we have on the drawing. Now I need to get my profile to match, or the opening, the cut opening to match what I want to see here for height and dimensions. So I have to get to that profile. If you put your cursor over the edge of the wall in the profile, you're going to get the wall first, but if you hit the tab key and once you see it say open and cut, you click on that and that's the actual sketch for the opening that creates the hole in the wall. Okay? So I want to edit that sketch. If you go to try to unlock things, it's going to give you a alignment from family template constraint, and it won't allow you to unlock it, but it will, however, allow you to erase the entire sketch and start over. Okay? So I tried to just unlock everything and then make a change to it, just stretching the lines, but it's better just to erase the sketch that's there. Now I want to create a new sketch, so I'm going to use the Lines tool, not Pick Lines tool, and I'm going to start here and just move around the edges of the window until I create the shape that I want. So that's the new shape that I'm looking for. So I want that constrained. This line, I realize I can't keep pointing to the screen, I have to point up here. I want this constrained to this line right here, so I'm going to lock that. I want this constrained to this line here, so I'll lock that, and then I want this width, making sure that that's constrained to that line. Now this line here, I worried about how it was going to behave, but because of the way that we've drawn it so it's connected to those two endpoints of those lines, and we've constrained those lines to these widths and height, it actually will change size and move around with the width and heights that I set for both sides of the drawing. Did you have a question, Linda? Oh, let me back it up. I think I went through that a little bit too quickly. So when you create the lines, as you create the line, whoops, I went back too far. There we go. As you create the line, when I draw the line in there, the lock appears then. You can lock it at that point. But let's say, you notice that I just went right through and I just kept going and then I locked them all. In order to lock them all, you just go back, move it, and then reconnect it to the line, and then the lock will reappear. Just like that. Okay, so now I've got the new opening constraints set. So I will hit finish edit mode here for just the opening, and if we look at this in 3D, we have a trapezoid opening now. So right now I want to test this right now and see if I'm going to be able to make changes to the size of this by controlling height 1 or height 2 and then the width, but I don't have a height 2 parameter yet. So what do I need to do? Add a parameter. So let's create, or go to annotate rather, add a dimension, and my dimension is going to go from reference plane for the sill height and then go to reference plane for the height 2. Put that in there, and then to add a parameter I select that dimension. Across from label I'm going to add a new parameter and call that height 2. And this should be, this could either be a type or an instance parameter. But if it was a type parameter, let's think about how would you name this trapezoid window if it was a type parameter. You'd have to call it by width and then height 1 and height 2. So it would have to be like, width, let's say, is 3 feet, height 1 is 1 foot, height 2 is 2 feet. I'm not sure how you would name that, but so that's the way that you have to think about it. I'd have to name it to indicate all three of those heights, and not one of them isn't a depth. So it's not a three-dimensional thing. It's because you have two different heights. Or do you want to be able to just change this, and then it doesn't change the style? That's the way you want to think about it. So if this is going to be always going to be to some kind of custom trapezoid window, and you want to be able to change it on the fly for whatever scenario you have, you probably just want it to be an instance, right? Yes?
So making it a type makes it less flexible?
It doesn't make it less flexible, but it requires you to have to constantly change the name of the window if you want to change that value, so that you end up creating a family of them, of the different scenarios that you have. So if you knew that if you were building this family for let's say a custom window manufacturer, and they said we will offer this trapezoid window in these sizes, and they had restrictions for the height 1 and height 2, then I would make it a type parameter, because then you would include it in the family and someone could load the size that they want. But if it was going to be like, oh, we make this window any size you need, because it has to be, and usually trapezoids are like that, then it should be an instance parameter. Now I don't have to keep changing the style, because I can change the instance for this window. I can have another window, it's the same type on the other side, and I can change the instance for that one. They could be two different sizes, but the same type. See? Okay. So I think it makes more sense as an instance, but you may decide it doesn't after you do this. It depends on the scenario. So height 2 is going to be an instance parameter for now. This is something that we can change. Let's say later on you decided, oh geez, I really don't think that should be an instance parameter, it should be a type. You highlight that parameter, when you hit modify you can change it to type, okay? So that decision you make is not one that's set in stone. So I'm going to set this to 2 feet for now as a default. And then I just saw the model flex, which is really good news. So let's say that the height back here, let's see what happens when we make that 5. Do you see that I want to make sure that line is behaving right there? And then I want to change the height here to 3. And we'll change the width to 4. And everything seems to be working, okay? So that's another thing that I would tell you, is to flex your model early and often, because then you know when the problem happens, right? Right now, if I saw a problem, I might not have constrained the opening cut properly, something like that. Go and fix that now, and then it's not going to come up later. Okay, so let's hit OK to that and keep going. So far so good. That's what we want for a trapezoid shape. We can change either one of these and create pretty much any configuration we want. Oh, one of the things I want to check is, can I set this height to 0? Nope. Okay. So that gives you your limits. Would you want to set that height to 0? Maybe 2 inches? Let's see. So I can set it to 2 inches. Let's see if we can set it to 1 inch. I want to know what the limits are to the constraint. So it looks like I can set that to as low as 1 inch. And so that would make it look like a triangular trapezoid. It may be better for us to deal with it as, instead of dealing with it this way, create a separate window style that's a triangular window. So you'd have a triangle window, and then you'd have a trapezoid window if you wanted different shapes, okay? All right, so let's move on to the trim and the glazing. So for the trim, I do want to create a more sophisticated trim profile that follows the profile of the cut plane. So I want to create a sweep. We haven't done a sweep yet. You've done edited an existing sweep, but let's create one on our own. So if we hit the sweep tool here, you have 2 things that you have to make within a sweep. You have to create a path, and you have to create a profile. Profile is grayed out until you've defined your path. So let's sketch the path first. The path I should be following is the opening. So I'm going to click the Pick Lines tool and click on the actual lines of the opening and lock that as I go. Where am I? I'm in Create and Sweep. And then I hit Edit Path. So if you go in, or Sketch Path rather. So this is where I am right now. Let's hit, there. Now I'm not in anything. If you go under Create and then Sweep, then you have Sketch Path. We're in a sketch mode already, but with a sweep, because there's 2 profiles basically we have to create. We have one that's the path and one's the profile. So you're going to have to go into sketch mode for each one while you're in the sketch mode for the sweep. So we're in the sketch mode for the sweep, then we go into the sketch mode for the path. Now we're in the sketch mode of a sketch mode. Really, really complicated. Yeah, it is. Because people get really confused where they are. So right now I'm creating the path. Okay? Creating the path. Now I've got the path created. I hit the checkbox. Did I already have a path in there? There we go. I don't know why it had a second loop in there. I must have clicked it twice accidentally. Alright, now it should work. So there's my path. This button right here is where the path begins and starts extruding around the whole profile. So we're looking at the path that the extrusion is going to take, but where we're going to look at the extrusion would need to be in a top view or a side view for us to be able to see it. Okay, so I'm going to now edit the profile of the path, not path, but the profile, the extruded piece, and I get two options. I've got a ceiling plan or a floor plan, so I'm just going to go to the floor plan to look down on the opening now. And this is where Jenny and hers, she wasn't getting this option. She was only getting side view, so I knew something wasn't quite right. So we hit open view. Now we're looking down on it, and this button right here, that red button, is the same spot that red button was when in the path extrusion that we have. So it shows you where this path is beginning. That's it, okay? It also shows you on what plane you're going to be drawing that profile. So where that profile gets drawn is kind of in the middle of that line that we created, the first one that we selected, okay? And you'll see that there's a little tiny grid here, and that's the center of where the profile is being extruded. You don't have to align the profile with this or anything. It's just showing you where its start point is, okay? Now I'm going to create an extrusion that includes the wrap around the wall and the jam, okay? So I'm going to start here, go back 1.5 inches. Then this is going to be 0.75 inches. And then I'm going to go over 3.5. And then I'll fix the other side so it's the same dimensions. Whoops. I thought I was drawing that. I think it ends up being 7.5. Yeah, if you do the math. Alright, so this is now a closed loop shape. See, I have pink lines that are defining the shape that I want for the trim, but I want to add a little bit more detail. I'm just going to use the rectangle command and put that rectangle in there. It's going to give me a warning. And I just want to delete that inside line and then use this split element tool, split the element, and then I can trim these pieces together like that. So I create that shape. That's what I'm looking for. Let me hit the checkbox on here and I'll show you. I hit edit profile. You didn't finish making the path then. Then you have to hit the green checkbox to get out of the path. And then you can go to edit profile.
Yeah, it's grayed out. Select profile first and edit profile.
Okay. So it worked? You in there now? Okay. So some of the constraints that I would put in here would control the size of this and the depth and the overhang over the wall. So you could get really, really complicated with these dimensions, or you can kind of just put a few in that control certain things. So I sort of want this right here to stay centered on the wall. So I'm going to add annotation that constrains, or let me go back into the profile. So I'm going to add annotation that constrains the edges of this to the center. So I want to make that equal on both sides. All right, so that's one constraint I want to make. Yeah.
You just kind of ran through the whole, I don't even know what to call it, honestly. Can you just go back through the process of it? The whole trim that you just made right there?
You mean just how to draw this? Yep. Okay, so let's delete it. Can I delete it at this point? So that's the, I have to hit the checkbox to get out of finish mode for path. Path is done. Now this should become available. Hit edit profile. I want to pick floor plan. So I'm just using the line tool, and I'm not even, you know what I'm going to do is I'm not even going to put in any dimensions. I'm going to put them in after, okay? I want this to come back a certain distance, then I want it to go up, and then over, and then down about the same distance, and then I want it to go to there, and then it has to wrap around the wall on the inside, right? So just draw something like that. Just making that shape. Then to create the jam, I just use the rectangle tool, put that in there, and ignore that, like I said. And then we want to get rid of the line, the extra line from the rectangle we created, and then you want to use this split element. It just allows you to split something so you can trim it in both ways. Because if I don't split that, what's going to happen when I trim it this way is it's going to remove that whole entire line instead of having two of them, right? So that's the basic shape. I don't care about dimensions at this point, but that's the basic shape that I'm looking for. Now I can put in some realistic dimensions. So let's create some dimensions starting off with this reference line. Whoops, I always forget to hit aligned. So I want to go from this reference line to this one and set that dimension so that that pink line is, whoops, I hate that I can't get to that dimension sometimes. There, now I can. Oh, come on. I don't know why that happens sometimes. Let me try it again. Annotate.
It's not letting you select it.
It's not letting me select it either. I should be able to still select it though. So let me try this. Let me do annotation from here to here. So I set all of these dimensions in here. Yeah, see, that one will let me select it. It might be that I can't. Oh, I know what I was doing wrong. I'm sorry. Now I know what I was doing wrong. This should be. I can't use. I don't think I can use this as a reference plane. I can use something on the object on the model as a reference plane. Yeah. So if I hit the edge of the wall to here, and then lock that, and that's already at 3/4, that will work. And I want the same thing on the other side. So I want to hit the edge of the wall, and then the edge of the trim, lock that. Let's create another annotative dimension from, oh, and I want to align some things before I do this too. Do you see how I want this line and that line to be aligned? And that one and that one. So let's lock those and align them. So then I only have to deal with one of them, not both sides. So I want those two lines to remain aligned. And I want these two lines here to remain aligned. And then when I add my dimensions, I can add a dimension from this line here, which is the width of the door, to the edge of the trim. What do I want that to be? 2 inches? I'm just making decisions. If yours don't end up being the same as mine, that's okay. And then I'd want maybe to define the width of this wraparound here to be something that would be realistic. So that would be one piece of trim right there that would be 3.5 inches if it was a 2x4 or 1x4. Okay, so I would hit this line and change that to 3.5 inches. Yeah, once you're annotating it, yeah, if you want it to stay that way, yeah, you're locking it. So this is where the profile really does get a little bit. The profile can't really get messed up that easily though. It's gonna stay put. Some of the things, though, that you do want to make sure you're correcting or locking is the width here. So if you don't lock the width, what's going to happen if you don't lock the width here is if you change the size of the window, it could make it so the trim ends up being wider rather than the trim staying with the window profile, okay? The alignment, you click on align, pick the 2 lines you want to align, and then the little lock will come up, okay? And so let me add one more dimension from here to here to get that to be, that's probably not 2 inches, that's probably more like 0.75 as well. And then I had tried to add a dimension from the edge to the center to the edge, and I want to make that equal. I don't care what its dimension is, I just want it to be equal, okay? So that should work. And if I lock those, I like it. So there's my profile. What you have to do to create an equal dimension, this actually, if you want that to be specific, this is how I would do it first. I would do this, get the dimension in there, and let's see if we can add another annotative dimension on the inside. So I'm going to go right across, including all 3 extension lines, and then I can see what those dimensions are actually saying. Setting this to 1:1 scale, you can see the dimensions a little bit better. So those are equal already, right? But I want to change this here first to an even value, like 2 inches. And then I can select this side here and move it in. Let's see if I can make it equal. This part of it gets a little bit tricky. When you select the dimensions, you'll see an equal sign. When you select the 2 dimensions, you're not going to get this if you only have 1 dimension and then you make another one. You have to make them both, and then you'll see an equal sign, and it will allow you to equalize those 2 dimensions. Now, if you don't care about the dimension, it's fine, but if you do care about the dimension, you kind of have to go back and look to see what did the dimension end up being. You select one of the lines or the other and change that to 2 inches, and then it's going to say can't change dimension segment to this value, but it's not true. You can, but you just have to unlock this equal, set it, and then go back. It's a little bit convoluted, but I don't really care what the size of it is. So let me set this back to 1 inch equals a foot. So that's it. That's the profile. Now profiles take a little bit of time to create, and what if we wanted to use that profile again somewhere? This is where profile family comes in handy. I wouldn't have to have done all of that drawing in this family if I had already had that profile made somewhere, and I could control all the dimensions of it and everything, okay? So one of the other options before we'd gone into this profile is we had a load profile option, where we could have gone and loaded an existing profile. So this is something to think about, as the families aren't just the 3-dimensional entities that you end up with. There are families that are profiles for families as well. So if you find yourself making a profile quite often, instead of making that profile over and over again, make one that's kind of standard size and see if you can get it to work. You can always bring it in and then edit it for that specific family as well. Yes? Yep.
You actually have to draw the profile like starting at that origin point, because my origin was like randomly in the middle of the opening. So it's like at the corner.
It was in a different position.
Yeah.
I don't think that much matters, because it's the profile itself is just going to follow the path from that location, and that origin point is see how there's this little tiny smaller grid that we're drawing on. It's creating a work plane for us to work off of that's at the same exact level as where that dot showed up in the elevation. That's it. So I don't think it matters, because when I hit the checkbox, it should work if I have made this a true closed profile and I haven't copied any lines.
So I tried hitting my checkbox and it said it couldn't make the sweep, and I wondered if it's because this
So no part of it at all is on the red dot?
So it's the red dot's like it's not where I want the sweep to be.
Well, then your path might not be in the right place. Let me just hit the checkbox on this one and show you what ends up happening. So now I've closed down that profile. So I've closed the sketch path. I've closed the profile, but I'm still in the sweep mode. So what do? I have to hit the green checkbox one more time. Okay? Once I hit the green checkbox the last time, we go to the 3D view, and now that trim is following the profile of the window, right? And then I want to stop right now and flex my model. Let's see if this is working still. And does the trim go with it? Yes. Okay? So that's great. Leslie, I'd have to look at yours to see what you're doing, but one of the things that could be going on is if we go in and edit the sweep, where you decided to put your path and where you're putting your profile should be, see, this is a perfect way for me to illustrate it. Actually, I should have gone to this 3D view. Remember when I was actually creating the profile, that red dot showed up when I created the profile for the path, and it showed up there? Then the profile itself gets drawn on that little plane. If that little profile point isn't in the right spot for you, then I don't think you have the path in the right place for your profile. Or you don't have your profile drawn. Well, it shouldn't matter because it's following the path. It's going to follow the path all the way around. It doesn't really matter where that dot is as long as it's somewhere along that path, right? Now, if you don't like where it started, like let's say it would be a lot harder to draw the profile from this line right here. So if I put the dot on that one, it's because you picked that line first. Don't pick that line first when you create the path. Okay? All right. Okay, so the last step here that I want is to add the glazing in here, and then I'm going to add some instance parameters for materials, okay? Glazing is really easy. I'm going to go to the exterior side, and I'm simply going to create an extrusion using the Pick Lines tool, and I'm going to pick the inside edge, and I better lock it as I go. The inside, whoops, wrong one. That inside edge of that trim or profile that I created. So this one wasn't locked yet. Let me lock that one. So everything's locked, that inside edge, which means that if the window size grows, then that extrusion is going to grow with it. So hit the checkbox, look at this in 3D view, and it is not what I want. So what's wrong with the glazing is that it's extruded to a foot, and it's not where it should be inside the window frame, okay? So I need to go to that top view. Not that one, but this one, the floor plan one. And there's the glazing right there. That's the glazing. And I'm going to start off with moving the glazing in both directions. And let me add some dimensions from there to there. I want that to be, still not working, is it? It's not going to let me do that. Oh, I know what to do instead here. So let's do it this way. Take the glazing and attach it to the center of the window. And then I'm going to look to see what I have for dimensions over here. So that side of the glazing is the extrusion end, and it's at 3 inches. I want that to actually be at 3.25 inches. Let's see where it puts the glazing. So see how that put the glazing a 1/4 of an inch down from where the center of the window is? So I had to put the glazing there first to see where it was in 3-dimensional space. That told me that I was at 3 inches in the, I don't know, in this direction. We are at the 3-inch mark. So on the other side, I want it to be 2.75 inches, and it should then put that at a 1/4 of an inch on the other side of the center of the window. So that this is centered now, that's centered now. So I should be able to go to the 3D view and look at this in a shade mode, and everything's shaded the same color as the wall, which is not looking so good, right? But we have all the elements there. So I want to create a separate material for glazing and a separate material for the frame. So I have two materials. So to create those materials, if we go into properties, I can add a new property this way. I can add a new parameter, or I can select the material itself. So this is the object. So this is going to become the glazing. I want it to become glazing. Over here in the properties, across from material, you can either set a material color here. What happens if I just set that to glass? I just set that to glass, and then that's it. What's that? Right, and I don't have an opportunity to change that, do I? That's set in the family. So if I wanted to change it, I'd have to open the family file, edit the family, and change it to a different material. So what if I want to be able to change it to different things, right?
What would you want to change it to?
Well, what if it, instead of being like, there's different colors of glass. So if I have just plain clear glass, or if I wanted to have like a frosted glass or something like that, I couldn't do that, all right? But if we, instead of calling it glass, we call it glazing, it could be any kind of glazing that I decide, okay? So I want to, instead of creating the material by category here, you're going to see this tiny little ellipsis button next to that category, which opens up your associate parameters dialog box. I want to add a parameter. If I add a parameter, it is automatically going to set it to a common material, materials and finishes, because I was clicking on a finishes characteristic of the properties, right? So it's going to set all that stuff for us automatically. This should be an instance parameter, and as a default, this type of, or this material I'm going to call glazing. Okay? I like to use capital G, glazing. So I've got a glazing material. While I'm here, I could also add trim, right? Same thing, it should be instance. And then what I end up having now are two names of materials, the generic name of the material that I bring in with the window, but I could set it to any material I want. The default materials, however, I'm going to set are clear glass and wood. Okay, so because they're instances, I have to set a default material. So when I hit OK, it still doesn't look like glass and wood, right? But now I can go into my parameters, and the glazing and trim are there, and they have default in parentheses, and it's set right now to just by category. If I change that so that I use glass for the glazing, and by category, if I change that to the just plain wood, generic wood, let's say, to the trim, then when I hit apply, this should now come in with those materials once I set them. So then I'd set the object itself to that material. So if we go across from material, this says wood, it should be glazing, and now it's glass. And this material here isn't set yet, it should be trim, and now it's trim. We've got trim and glazing. I don't know, I don't like that wood material, do you? It looks like the wall, doesn't it? So let's change that. So let's change it to oak instead. Okay.
I don't have such a big list.
I'm not seeing the list.
I have like 4 things.
You don't have the big list?
I have like default, glass, and ocean.
Let me see if I got, I have it at shaded, so it should be showing the materials. So default, glass, and poche. So are you looking over here in this? So do you have that panel closed? Open up that panel, then you can go to Autodesk Materials and pick additional materials from the list. Okay? Oh, I know what I did wrong. I think I have it so the wood is not using rendered appearance. So I click on rendered appearance, make that the material, and I think we're going to see a change now. There we go. That's what we want to see. Okay? So then I've got a trapezoid. It seems to be working. I want to test it in my model now, so I would do a File, Save As, Family, and this is going to go in my S Drive 220 Families Windows, and I'll call it Trapezoid with Trim Inclass, because that's the one. This is the one I did in my office, and this is the one I did in class. And then I want to load it into the project that I have working on right now, that project that I saved. So let's see what happens to the window, what it looks like when we actually put it in an actual wall. It should behave exactly the way that we tested it. So I select that trapezoid. I can change my materials. These are the default materials that came into it, but I can still change them. That's the whole point. You should be able to change them. And I'm changing them by instance, so if I have more than one trapezoid, let's copy one over there. Let's make two of them. I should be able to change one, and the other one is not going to change. So I have head height 7. Let me see here. Oh, head 2. No, that's not it. Oh, height 2. There it is. Okay, so this is oh, I think I know what happened. Okay, so let's do 2 feet. See how it changes that one, but it leaves that one alone because it's an instance. But look what I have to do to change the overall height of the window. I have to go to Edit Type, and there's the height. So what do we want to do with height in this scenario? Make it an instance in this scenario. So I would go back to my window for my trapezoid, go into my parameters, and let's across from height, I want to modify it and change it to an instance instead. Oh, is it not going to let me? Oh, because it's a built-in parameter. So it had not occurred to me. No, this is all right, because now we got to work in. How do we figure it out? So let's see. I'm going to make my own height parameters, what I think I'm going to do, and then I can change it. So let's get rid of this one, and I'll call this new parameter height 2. So I'm going to select it, add a parameter, and call it height 2. Height 1, rather, thank you. That would work better. Yep, instance. And save it. Load it into the project, overwrite. So let's see if it's going to work now. I should have just tested it in there, shouldn't I have? I didn't, though. Okay, so we should have height 1 and height 2 now. Can we change them? Yep. Bless you. And then I would also want to do the same thing with width, wouldn't I? Okay. So in this scenario, you were given some parameters in the family that you didn't want them to behave the way that most families would want to behave. Height and width would be types, not instances. But with this one, you want it to be an instance. Yep, I didn't delete the old one. That's a good question. I'm not sure if we can delete the old one, but let's do the same thing. I'll do exactly the same thing I did with the width. So where is the width? It's not showing up here. It must be in reference plane at the top. Yeah, there's our width. Okay, so width, I'm deleting, and I'm going to add a new parameter. And I'm going to rename this. Add parameter. I might have to call this width 2. And it would be an instance. Or maybe let's call it trap width. Right? Save it. And load it back into the project, override existing. And look at the 3D view. Now we should be able to see all 3 instances. So if I want to change that to 4, I want to change this to 5, and this one to 2. Can I do it that way? Yes. All right. So now we've got it working. Yeah. No, you can watch it on the video. With all the starts and stops. All right, I'm going to stop the video now, and then I'll field any questions because that we've successfully completed the window.